What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the show once again. I am your host, Ryan Turbo Jackson, and at least until COVID calms down, my co-host, the handsome Mr. Kyle 2K's Kaler, is coming in over the phone lines. What's up, my brother? How are things today?
Good. Can't complain.
Yeah, it's
Can't
been
not complain. We got a lot of the Christmas stuff that we have needed to be, all the wrapping, making Christmas cookies and all that fun stuff. We got most of that stuff done today. So
Yeah, we kind of took care of a lot of that yesterday, but we're definitely Kristen and the kids are definitely decorating some cookies. So if you hear some banging in the background, they're breaking up candy canes. I almost said icicles. I don't know what the fuck I was thinking, but yes, candy canes. But if you found the show,
if you hear any banging going around on the doors here, it's just my kids because they've ate about 15 cookies a piece today. So.
of course, I mean you have to taste what you bake, right? I mean that's just kind of everybody knows that 2Ks. Everybody knows that. But as always, thank you for joining us. If you're new here, go ahead and drop in the comments that you are new. Tell me where you're from. Tell me a little bit about your fandom. Who are you rooting for? Who do you love? Who do you hate? Because let's get a conversation started. Because there's some stuff in this episode 2Ks that hits me near and dear, and I've got some really big opinions on it, and I want to get them out off my chest to not only people on Facebook because they've been hounding the shit out of me. I've had my phone blow up since 4 o'clock yesterday with some with some taunting and some other kind of, let's say, kind words, considering the game that happened at 4 o'clock yesterday. But if you don't know me, I am Ryan Turbo Jackson. My co-host on the other end is Kyle 2K's Kaler, and we are the host and co-host of the Turbo and 2K show, where we bring you our amateur opinions on everything sports. So, like I said, I do see some of you viewers out there. Don't be peepers. Go ahead and drop some knowledge in the comments. We'd love to meet you. But let me play my cool logo here. Biggity bam! And now we have
It's the Turbo and 2K
some audio
show.
to go along with it. And it didn't play. That's cool. Let's try that again.
It's the Turbo and 2K show.
Maybe it did. I just had the volume down low. But at any rate, yes, ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to talk about here, let's throw the thumbnail up. It's a championship reaction. Not only is it the championship reaction, 2Ks, but I didn't know that they're going to give us the top four before we even went on the air. So that's even more of a bonus. It's even more of a bonus. It's got me pretty pumped up. I'm about half staff now. But yeah, I guess I should have paid more attention. I thought that it was going to be later on in the night, so I wouldn't have time to make these slides and everything to bring you this content. But the content gods have looked upon me and said, here you go, Turbo. Here is what you need to make this show completely badass. So, 2Ks, are you ready to jump off into this?
yes, sir.
Because I'm pretty fucking excited about these slides. So, all right, like I said, here it is, ladies and gentlemen, the college football playoff bracket. Now, when we're looking at this, number one and number two, especially after yesterday's games, 2Ks I don't think is a surprise to anybody. Alabama and Clemson, especially Alabama. Obviously, the top undefeated team in the country. I mean, I guess there are some folks out there that are Cincinnati fans that are kind of upset that they're not even considered into this because they are undefeated. But you know what? They're not in the Power Five. So, I mean, it is what it is. But when this came out, 2Ks, when you looked at it, were you shocked at all?
No. And we kind of touched on it a little bit last week. I kind of stated my case where I thought going into it, into the ACC championship game, I thought Notre Dame was safe either way. I really thought I would have liked to see them maybe compete in this game a little bit.
I think all of us, especially as Notre Dame fans.
Roll. Yeah, I mean, just kind of get rolled over. But no, I figured Notre Dame was safe. They were undefeated. They had an undefeated season. They and to be penalized for losing your conference championship game. Unfortunately, I just think that would have been way too much of a hit for them. And I mean, this goes to show you that we have to, sooner or later, we have to move to a playoff in this. I mean, how many years are we just going to talk about one or even two teams just getting completely screwed over when it comes to this? You know, you look at the college basketball tournament, and obviously you can't mock up a tournament for football that's that big, but you have to have, you know, a 16 or 18 kind of a tournament style, just to give some of these teams a chance. You know, Cincinnati's they're getting screwed. There's no other way to put it. But when you start, you know, matching these teams up on paper and looking at, you know, the talent on each side and the strength of schedule, Cincinnati, they don't compare with that. And you know, even the same thing can be said for, I mean, Texas A&M. You know, they're another team that is probably pretty upset now about, you know, not getting in also.
Oh yeah, because Jimbo Fisher even came out and said that there should be no way in hell that my team is not in the top four. And you know, my initial reaction was yes, Alabama, Clemson, easy 1 and 2. I mean, hands down. I'm pretty sure all of us. I mean, without playing as many games as Clemson and Alabama, you can't put Ohio State up at 1 or 2. In my opinion, the sky limit would be where they're at number 3. And I mean, it's definitely not any fault of Ohio State or the team or any of that. I mean, even with the truncated schedule, they did have 3 games that they couldn't play because of COVID, so can't really blame them on that. But 2Ks, I'm gonna come out and say it, and there's probably gonna be a lot of people that are pissed off. Notre Dame does not belong in this fucking list. The way they played yesterday, they couldn't beat anybody. They couldn't beat anybody. And yes, they ended up getting a garbage time touchdown, but they're wasting a spot because Alabama is going to blow the fucking doors off of them. I'm sorry. Might as well put Texas A&M in there and see what they could do, because obviously if Notre Dame, yes, they beat Clemson the first time, but that Clemson team was a completely different team. They had Trevor Lawrence back. They had their defensive stars back. That was an entirely different team, and you could tell that the first time around, they absolutely got pissed because they lost. They lost in the trenches on both the offensive side and defensive side. They completely flipped the script and dominated both Notre Dame's offensive and defensive lines. The Notre Dame's offensive line couldn't open up any holes for the run game. They couldn't keep Ian Book even close to being comfortable in the pocket, and their secondary was pretty much locked down on any and all their tight ends and receivers. So, and with the exception of that one kind of fluke pick that Trevor Lawrence threw, and I knew the Irish were in for a long night when they went. Their first 3 drives that only yielded them 3 points. They needed to score touchdowns on every single one of those drives in order to compete with Clemson, and they didn't. And to say that, you know, it's come out that, oh, well, every team has a bad day. I get that. But it looked like the old Kelly where he couldn't get his team up for a big game. Granted, I don't know, maybe with the lack of players that played the first time, or maybe because it was in South Bend, I don't know. But that fire, that just overall aura of that team that played that night in South Bend was not there last night. Excuse me. So I'm a big proponent. I would have put Texas A&M up there, and it breaks my heart to say that as a Notre Dame fan, but that was fucking embarrassing. That was, and it's gonna be embarrassing when Mac Jones torches that fucking secondary and Najee Davis just races through the defensive line. It's gonna be ridiculous. It's gonna be another 41-14 or even more game that Alabama just trounces Notre Dame. And I hate to say it because, like I said, I'm a Notre Dame fan through and through, but also, if you followed any of our show any amount of time, you also know I'm a realist. And this is me being 100% real. Now, the most surprising thing, I think, to most everybody is Oklahoma sitting at 6, which I think is utterly ridiculous. Now, does it matter in the grand scheme of things? Probably not. But 2Ks, I'm going to tell you that at number 6 probably should have been Cincinnati. If it's not Cincinnati, the next best 2-loss team, in my opinion, is Georgia. Georgia's by far, in my opinion, head and shoulders above Oklahoma. I would even, to me, there's no way that Oklahoma, even though it looks like it's spelled weird on my slide here, I'm pretty sure it's spelled right, but I don't know. What are your thoughts? I'm like we said, the top 4. Yeah, everyone pretty much thought that the top 4 would be the top 4, but
Yeah.
At the number 6 2Ks, do you think Oklahoma is deserving of that, or is there another team that you would put there?
No, I mean Cincinnati easily for me is that team that should be. I know I was kind of stating my case that Cincinnati should be a team that should be looked at as being in the top 4, and then but to me Cincinnati and Texas A&M are right there neck and neck. It's really kind of hard to pick one, but for me I kind of just I look at the conference championship game. Texas A&M, what kills them is they did not play in a conference championship game, and I get it. They played yesterday, and they played against a very bad Tennessee team, and they just rolled over them like everybody figured they would.
Well, I don't know. That game ended up being closer than a lot of people thought. Tennessee put up a pretty good fucking fight, but ultimately, in the end, yes, A&M did pull away, but. That was another thing that kind of led me to why I think the committee did give Notre Dame the nod, is that A&M didn't handle what were they, a 3-loss or a 3-win. They lost like 8 games in a row or some shit Tennessee team, to where Notre Dame at least lost to the number 3 team in the nation, and they had beat them once when they were the number 1 seed. So
yeah,
but yeah, that.
Yeah. I mean, you're trying to, you get to the end of this college football season, and it's not like this is the first year. Like there's always these very. I thought last year was the one year, and since they went to the playoff, where the decision was easy, they made the right decision. There was really no complaining, but things just fell into place last year with it. This year and every other year since they've done this, we have all these questions. People want Texas A&M to be in there. People are bitching because Notre Dame's in there. Well, it's hard to penalize Notre Dame too bad when they were the number 2 team going in the nation going into that game. They were undefeated, and they lose to Clemson, who is, their only loss all season was to Notre Dame, and
right.
It's so hard to kick Notre Dame out of that. I get it; they looked like shit yesterday. They're probably going to get their ass kicked by Alabama, but every team in the fucking nation's gotten their ass kicked. Is going to get their ass kicked by Alabama, with the exception of maybe. Clemson and Ohio State are the only 2 teams that I think have a fighting chance against Bama, and personally, I don't think either one of those teams can beat them. So, looking at the rest of it, like Cincinnati's been the one team all season long that has gotten no respect at all, and it's hard to really make a big time argument for them. They haven't really played any competition.
Yeah,
they won their conference against a Tulsa team who I think is ranked. In the 20s or something like that, and that's the best competition they've played all season long. So it's hard to give them a lot of credit. A&M, it's hard to knock on them too because they have 1 loss and it's to Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, they didn't. That's just kind of how it goes when you play in the SEC. I don't think there's much of an argument there. It's the best conference in college football, and you don't get the opportunity to play in that conference championship game. And that's going to hurt your chances of being able to get to the Final Four. And that's why, so many people are saying we need to see a playoff system to give these other teams a chance. And I think it's time to do it. College football is probably the most popular sport, and year in, year out. So many people follow college football, and forever now, the postseason in college football has been flawed. You're going back to the BCS Bowl when they had that system. That was a flawed system. They go to the playoff. Everybody thinks the playoff's going to be better. It's been nothing but flawed since we went to it. When are we going to make that change now? And it's gotta. We have to see improvement.
And I think too, excuse me, I think too what's kind of killing, excuse me, a team like Cincinnati, like A&M and Oklahoma, and quite frankly Notre Dame is that there was no out of conference games. Everything was in your conference. So, and you couldn't really judge like what the hell they call it. Where one team plays a team and then you play that team and kind of how you kind of scale up to them and stuff like that. So having the schedule the way it is, I think it made this, especially this playoff bracket, even more mucky and muddy than even past years. Because at least past years, you could look at the non-conference schedule. You could look at common opponents. You could look at a bunch of other statistics to where a lot of things might align differently. But as it is, you're probably never going to see another 6-win team be in the college football playoff. You'll probably, there's a lot of things when you look at this list in particular. It's unprecedented because we've never seen a pandemic like this before, and fingers crossed we never do again. But I think that has a lot to do with it. And just speaking from a Notre Dame perspective, Notre Dame's independent. They choose their own schedule. They're not limited to a conference schedule, even though they do play a handful of ACC games a year. But they're able to make their schedule as strong as they want to. And that's one of the major proponents of being an independent school. One of the downfalls is that you don't get a conference championship game. Whereas this year Notre Dame had the conference title game. They shit the bed, which made this thing even muckier. Now, had this been another 2 overtime game, then you might have still seen Notre Dame 2, Clemson 3, Ohio State 4. But since things worked out the way it did, it's like when I was watching this show 2Ks, I was like, you know what, you watch. Notre Dame's gonna be left off this list, and it's going to be a huge, huge travesty. Now, how much of the fact that Notre Dame is a big draw and a big name and will bring a lot of money to this, who knows how much that actually played a part in it, as opposed to, I shouldn't say as opposed to, but in addition to their schedule, their strength of schedule, and all of the stuff that they put every other team through. But yeah, I totally think that Cincinnati got fucked. Luke Fickell is doing extremely good things down there, and if he hangs around a couple more years, I'm not saying that I'm not saying it's impossible for a non-Power 5 to get on this list, but even if he might be the one to do it. I don't know. It's just going to depend on. It's going to have to be a lot of very special scenarios happen for that to happen. Whereas if he went to a Power 5 school, no matter where it is, just a Power 5 school, and turned things around like he did at Cincinnati, then the path to this is a lot easier. So that's one of the major headlines going through. Or going into this kind of off-season period after, or not even after this, because the defensive coordinator for Notre Dame is going to Vanderbilt. And I think that did that have an effect on the defense? I wouldn't think so, but you never know. But the coaching carousel has already started. Brett Bielema's in at Illinois. The Fighting Lovies are no longer the Fighting Lovies, but it's going to be interesting to see what the future holds for Luke Fickell, because I don't pin him in Cincinnati too much longer. I think he's off to bigger and better things.
Totally agree.
All right, well, let me get a drink here. 2Ks, I think we've kind of broken down. There really isn't much more to say than I think we're destined for another Bama Clemson showdown, especially if Justin Fields plays the way he did Saturday, because that's something we'll get into here in a little bit. But he's had his ups and downs, which is kind of weird for me. But then again, they've only had 6 games, so one could say that they're rested. The other hand could say that they're not cohesive yet because they haven't played that many games. And the games they have played have been kind of sporadic. So is it a good thing that they've been kind of on and off? Or is it a bad thing because you don't get the momentum, you don't get that, the team cohesiveness and stuff like that. So I'm not sure which one to lean on there. I think time will tell, obviously. But
yeah, I really don't know what to think about them at this point. I mean, preseason, I thought that they were possibly the best team in college football going into the season. Watching them a couple times, I don't think that anymore. And
no.
Watching them even in the game yesterday, and Northwestern is a good football team. Don't get me wrong, they're a very good football team. They're a very well coached football team. But
Pat Fitzgerald is another one that his names have been kind of thrown around as to going on to bigger, better pastures than Northwestern. Yeah. So that's another one to keep an eye on.
He's one that I guess I'll believe it when I see it because his name's been thrown around. It seems like for 5-6 years here.
Oh yeah.
And nothing comes of it. So once I guess with him, I believe it when I actually see him do something.
Yeah.
But getting back to Ohio State, even Justin Fields, he has not looked as sharp, and he's had some moments.
He's been very underwhelming.
Really, really good. But yes, exactly. That's it right there. I mean, that's his season in a nutshell. This is it, and a lot of it is probably the fact that they've only played 6 games and not a whole lot to see from it. But I don't know. In my opinion, Ohio State as a team has been very underwhelming.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Just not that powerhouse that even in games that they played in the season, like Penn State, we've kind of seen firsthand that Penn State's not a very good football team, and they stuck around with Ohio State that entire game, and then even the Rutgers, they stuck around with them for a little bit, and Indiana came right down to the wire, even though Indiana is a better football team than what they had been in the past, but they came, that's a 1-score game, and so Ohio State as a whole has just been, they're another team. I mean, you can make the argument that Notre Dame doesn't belong there, but you can make the argument that Ohio State doesn't belong there.
Yep. Very true.
And no matter how you want to put it, unfortunately with this, there's two teams, in my opinion, that are really getting screwed. That they don't have an opportunity to play. And in that I'm talking about Cincinnati and Texas A&M. I mean, they're screwed. But if you were to flip flop them in and take a team out like Notre Dame or Ohio State, then in my opinion, I think that they would be getting screwed. So it's just kind of getting back to it's a flawed system. You're never going to make everybody happy with it, and that's unfortunately that's just the way it is right now.
And I think regardless, whoever plays Alabama or Clemson you could say Clemson Ohio State is kind of a rematch from last year, but
I would be shocked if it's not a rematch or not a Alabama Clemson national championship game.
Absolutely,
I would be shocked if those aren't the two teams that are there.
Yeah, so I think I agree they should open it up. I think 8 teams would be more than enough.
Yep.
But I think at the end of the day, even if it was 8 teams, we're still going to end up with that Alabama-Clemson matchup regardless. In my opinion.
But I 100% agree. But part of me is, if you're not if you're not in a Power 5 conference, you don't even have an opportunity. Like,
No,
you can run the table, and you're not even going to get the opportunity to play in it. So change it and allow these teams to be in it. And if these teams, if Cincinnati rolls in there and they get beat by 20, 30 points to a team like Alabama, who's is the 1 seed, at least they're there. And that not only is that it makes everything fair and it gives them an opportunity to play in it, but it also allows these smaller schools, or I shouldn't necessarily say smaller schools, but schools that are not in a Power 5 conference. All that does is help out them for recruiting.
Absolutely.
And
100%.
and so you can recruit kids, and that you have the opportunity to have a chance to play in that playoff. That's what all these kids want at the end of the day. They want to have the opportunity to play on the big stage for a national championship. And going to those schools, unfortunately, where we're at right now, and only having a 4-team playoff, you don't really have that opportunity.
No.
You can, and it was and it's been proven this year, that you can run the table, you can win your conference, and unfortunately, the way that it is, you still don't get an opportunity to play for a championship.
Yep, it's not even this playoff format either. I mean, you go back and look at some of those Boise State teams that were powerhouses, the TCUs of the world, and they didn't get a chance to play for a title either. So, there's definitely some changes that need to be made. But my point bringing up the whole COVID thing is that I don't think we need to overreact, because, like I said, hopefully, fingers crossed, knock on wood, we never have to have this situation again. So let it run through. I think there's a couple more years on the TV deal, and then they can renegotiate, which would be the time that they would be open to moving it to an 8 or 12 or something playoff. So just everyone hold tight. The world isn't over. We don't need to go back to the BCS and the computers. I think this is a better way. Let it run its course, and then, because this is going to be a trial thing for a few years, the 4-team playoff. So it's not perfect. I'm sure by 2Ks, look at the NCAA football or basketball bracket. They're always talking about teams being left off there, and there's like 68 teams now. So you're never, no matter what bracket size you do, there's always going to be someone left out. So everyone calm down. It'll be fine. But let's move into the Big 12 here, 2Ks, because I think this is one of the first games of the day, Saturday. So let's jump on over to this. And this one kind of threw me for a loop. I mean, the score is not really indicative on how this game went. Oklahoma won 27-21 over an Iowa State team that had beat them previously. And this game started out very weird. I was listening to it on the radio as I was doing some Christmas shopping yesterday, so I will admit I didn't get to watch any of this, but it seemed like Oklahoma had control of that game, and with the exception of only about 3 or 4 minutes, it seems like. Is it Brock Purdy for Iowa State? I mean, both these quarterbacks have been there for a while. They're neither one of them are bright and new, but Purdy threw way too many interceptions, and like I said, Oklahoma dominated this game, in my opinion, from pretty much open to close. Yes, Iowa State did mount a comeback towards the end, but at the end, you saw what got him into trouble in the first place, which was interceptions. And especially in that situation, it was 3rd down, I think. And he just pretty much throws up a duck. And the dude from Oklahoma intercepts it, where there was a dude wide open in the flat. If he would have just taken the flat, who knows what the running back, I want to say, yeah, his last name's Hall. What he could have done. He'd already had 2 touchdowns earlier in the game, so as a seasoned vet, I would have expected a little bit better game management. But like I said, he had already thrown 2 picks prior to that, and yeah, like I said, in my opinion, the score really the game wasn't as close as the score would seem to be. Did you catch did you catch any of this game, or I want to say it was on the same time as the Ohio State game?
Yeah, I watched. I was mostly watching the Ohio State game, and then I also was trying to. I started to watch a little bit of the Iowa Gonzaga basketball game, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, that wasn't a very good game. It's going to be a much better game than what it was. But I did watch a little bit of this. I caught Matt Campbell actually just losing his fucking mind on the sidelines.
Yep.
When there was the no call offsides penalty, which I don't blame him. That was fucking awful how that call was not made. But yeah, that's about pretty much really the only thing I can say I caught of the game.
Yeah, like I said, I'm a dude, and I went out and obviously late and came up rather unsuccessful with a lot of my ideas. So that was pretty frustrating. So I had to go to the online thing, and there's going to be a lot of stuff that's late. So, yay, Turbo, you're awesome for thinking ahead and doing this. But regardless of that, we're not talking about that. We're talking about fucking football, which is the most important thing. This to me, coming down the stretch, Oklahoma is, I can see why the committee would want to rank them as high as they did. Towards the end of the year, they just were gangbusters. I mean, they were ripping teams apart, and you could tell that exactly when the switch flipped for this team. Had they started the season out like that and not dropped games that they shouldn't have, then you might be looking at Oklahoma playing themselves into that top four, one of the top four spots. But it's one of those classic situations where you step on your dick and you lose games that you shouldn't. But luckily, the games that they lost, they did not throw shoes in order to lose the game. So that's obviously a plus. And we'll get to that team here in a little bit because I'm very disappointed in that team. But that's neither here nor there. But Rattler had a great game.
That's who I was going to mention is kind of Oklahoma season was. You have a freshman quarterback. First couple games of the season, just, and I can remember saying it back. I think it was maybe week 1 or maybe week 2. I think week 2 was when he had like the 3 interception game when they lost to Kansas State in the close one. I can remember saying then, that kid's going to be Spencer Rattler is going to be a kid that we're going to be talking about next year as a potential Heisman winner.
Yeah,
preseason potential Heisman winner. That's how good of a quarterback this kid's going to be. Beginning of the season, obviously, he just hadn't played before in Oklahoma. The last few years hasn't really had to worry about the quarterback position.
No. Look at all of them in the NFL and the Heisman trophies they've won.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. And so with going into this year, with a freshman quarterback, it took a few games for them to kind of catch their stride. But once they did, going into the middle of the season, then to the end of the season, it's safe to say that they're one of the best teams in college football. Unfortunately, with the 2 losses in the beginning of the season, it just didn't work for them.
No, it's funny you bring that up because this is another team that could have benefited from spring games and spring practices and stuff like that to get Rattler more acclimated to the offense to where he might be a little bit more prepared to go into starting the season. So who knows what could have happened. Stevenson went 18 carries for 97 yards. Mims, I think, is a stud. 7 receptions, 101 yards, and a touchdown. Okay, now we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about that. Had a little internet hiccup, but we are back. We are live, and I just kind of gave all the stats for the individuals in the Oklahoma-Iowa State. So. Any last thoughts about the Big 12 title game here, 2Ks?
No, unfortunately with these 2 teams, and I get it, the Big 12 is a powerhouse conference, but in order for one of these teams, in my opinion, to have a chance at getting into that Final Four, something really drastic was going to have to happen. Oklahoma probably, the way that they've been playing here in the past few weeks, they probably could. A team that could actually compete with with Alabama or Clemson, but just they with the losses they had at the beginning of the season, they just didn't have a chance with it.
Yeah, and one other thing that I did want to bring up, 2Ks, before we get too far into this, and as folks notice, I did not put a slide. You're going to notice there's no Pac-12 slide in here. Why? Because the Pac-12 sucks. The Pac-12 sucks. They had a
not even worth talking about.
No, then this is going to be the only 20-second clip of my time they're going to get is they had a USC team play an Oregon team, was it? That was just kind of thrown in at the last minute. It's supposed to be Washington, and Oregon beat USC. USC was the best team, the quote-unquote best team in the Pac-12. Get beat by a team that didn't even win their division. So, and when that happens, you don't get a lot of love from Turbo and the 2K crew. So, get your shit together, Pac-12, and maybe we'll see you next year. Now, 2Ks, let's jump into the Big Ten, which I know is near and dear to your heart. And we kind of talked about the inconsistencies that Mr. Fields has been having. They did squeak through a win, 22-10, and I have to admit, 2Ks, is that one of the things that I kind of looked at going forward with this was, did they beat Northwestern convincingly enough? And obviously the answer was yes, but in my opinion, this Ohio State team should have ran through this Northwestern team. There should have been no question. The only really bright spot was Sermon going 29 carries, 331 yards, and 2 touchdowns. 331 yards is not only the Big Ten title game, most rushing yards in a Big Ten title game, but also most rushing yards in a game period in Ohio State history. He passed Mr. Eddie George for that on Saturday. And as you can see, Fields' top receiver was Jay Fleming, four receptions for 53 yards. But you know what? That's almost half of what Justin Fields went. He went 12 for 27 for 114 yards. And again, uncharacteristic interceptions, 2 interceptions. So I'm not sure what's going on offensively with the Buckeyes there. The Buckeye defense did a great job keeping Northwestern to 10 points. Not to say that Northwestern is a scoring powerhouse by any means, but Patrick Ramsey went 24 for 37, 224 yards, and 2 interceptions. Pardon me. Running back Porter, 16 carries, 61 yards, and 1 touchdown. And I'm not even going to try. The top receiver was Chikikawa Bowman, whatever the fuck his name is. 8 catches for 103 yards. So definitely not the. I guarantee if some of the old Ohio State coaches, which are long gone, saw 331 yards on the ground, they'd probably have stiff boners right now, because that's what Big Ten football was ground and pound back then. But it's when you have a quarterback like Justin Fields, I mean, you kind of expect more offensive production from him. The only thing I'm missing in this slide is I did not pull how many rushing yards he had himself, but I'm assuming it wasn't much, considering Sermon had 331 yards himself. So definitely not the score that I was expecting. Definitely not the the stats that I was expecting. And I know 2K crew, we really don't we really don't build our shows around stats by any means, but just wanted to put these up here so it just was more than just Ohio State 22, Northwestern 10, so a little bit more eye appealing. But if this Ohio State team shows up January 1st, I think it's New Year's Day when the 2 semifinal games are played. Clemson's going to beat the doors off of this team. Beat the fucking doors off of them. And I'm not saying that my Irish are world beaters by any means, but Ohio State should have put up at least 40 on Northwestern. They should have had a convincing victory in my opinion, to kind of give that shock and awe and wow factor to the committee. Obviously, in hindsight, didn't really fucking matter. But with that offense, they needed a coming out game, and this was the perfect opportunity. And to be honest with you, they really haven't had a coming out party. Justin Fields has not had that Heisman moment. So for all you Ohio State fans, Buckeye country, I'm sorry, there is no way in hell Justin Fields is even coming close to the Heisman Trophy. He shouldn't even be invited to the party. He's definitely played his. If Kyle Trask from Florida has played his way out, there's no way Justin Fields should even be in the same building, let alone at the party. So,
no, it was a very just wasn't. I mean, watching them play, there was just nothing. Yes, they won the football game. They won the Big Ten championship, but it was a flat game. You know, just wasn't that typical Ohio State game that you watch where the quarterback's not only, you know, throwing the ball all over the place for him, but also running all over the place like you kind of used to with Justin Fields, where he beats you in both ways in the game. But he couldn't do anything. He couldn't get anything going for him. And luckily, Sermon showed up and rushed for probably. There was, Sermon has just a career day. 300. It's not like he's been doing this stuff week in, week out, because I haven't even. This is a kid that I really haven't even heard about all season long, and then all of a sudden, in the biggest game of the season, he goes off for well over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns, and
I can't even tell you the last time I've seen a back go over 300 yards in a game.
No, and even with all that happening, it was just like when the game was over, it was just like, that wasn't all that. That definitely didn't look like a football team that should be playing in the 4-team playoff.
No, it definitely, like I said, it didn't have that awe factor to it. I did end up watching. I want to say that at least the last quarter of this game, and it was so fucking boring because I know I'm using this term loosely. We're kind of, I guess, seasoned nowadays to have. We're looking for that, 45 points and the quarterback to have 300 yards passing and 3 touchdowns. And we're, like I said, if you're a diehard Big Ten fan, regardless of your fandom and your team, you absolutely love this game because it was ground and pound. It was ground and pound. And to be honest with you, this Sermon kid, I had no idea where the fuck he even came from. I guess he's a transfer from Oklahoma, which kind of makes sense because Oklahoma doesn't run the fucking football anymore. They just throw it all over the yard. So is this kid the next in line, like the Zeke Elliott's, the J.K. Dobbins that have come out of Ohio State? I'm not sure because, like I said, then again, Ohio State's only played 6 games. I think I've watched a half of collectively of their 6 games. So it's not like I've spent a lot of time watching tape and actually getting to know a lot of the dudes on that team aside from Justin Fields, because I always, of course, take a look at least the box score to see what his stats and stuff like that. But yeah, kind of I'm gonna label this title game 2Ks as boring. It was boring.
Yeah.
Even though for Sermon, like you said, had a career day, I'm sure he was super pumped. The offensive line from Ohio State deserves a lot of credit if this kid's going over 300 yards. But it was boring. It was boring. Maybe we've, like I said, we're getting conditioned to where we need passing and we need excitement, and it just kind of goes to show you that a 300 yard rushing game kind of goes under the radar. So I don't know. Like I said, when we were kind of breaking down the Ohio State team, yet again, a game that's underwhelming. And I think it would be hard for someone to argue with me, and I would accept that argument, is that they are underwhelming.
I agree.
Let's move on to the ACC, which this one's going to hurt 2Ks. This one's going to hurt. This one's going to hurt. And this too.
Yeah,
This
there's
too.
really not anything, a whole lot to talk about with this one.
No. No. And to be honest with you, the 34-10 score is not indicative on how dominant Clemson was over Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
Notre Dame started out the game great. Great. There, I think at one point they ran like 25 plays to Clemson's 5. The only thing that's kicking the dick, they had 3 points. And Trevor Lawrence just went off, and I will eat my words to say that, because I think you and I had both talked about it. I didn't think it would be that big of a difference having Lawrence back. I think the defensive starters back would be more of an impact. And the defensive starters, yes, were a very vast impact. But Trevor Lawrence showed that he went 25 for 36, 322 in the air, 2 touchdowns, and like I said, that one kind of fluke pick. Excuse me. Early in the game. But it was dominant, and they had held ETN to 28 yards in the first game. Dude went for 124 on 10 carries and a touchdown. You could just tell that Clemson team took offense to how badly they got handled on the offensive and defensive line, and totally flipped the script on them. I mean, I had a lot of people saying Ian Book's a bitch and he sucks, and he had no time to do anything.
No.
He had absolutely... He was running for his life the whole entire game. The receivers were not getting open. A lot of those sacks were not on the offensive line. They were coverage sacks. So... and they could not get the running game going.
No, they couldn't. Notre Dame just never got anything going. And then you see, the Clemson defensive line just tearing the interior of that offensive line away from Notre Dame. Because when Ian Book is at his best, he's throwing the ball, but he's such a threat to take off and run the ball.
And he didn't run that much.
When the pocket opens up and he's able to, he doesn't run a lot, but he's able. But when the pocket opens up for him and he's able to run and pick up first downs and pick up something. Mm-hmm. And Clemson was just completely blowing the interior of that line apart, and he was trying to get outside of that, and it was just he looked like a bee and just a hive.
Yeah.
A whole just swarming him the whole fucking game, but no, it was ugly. Was not. I don't know did you end up finishing this game, because I turned it off I think I ended up watching the first couple drives of the third quarter, and then I had to turn it off.
Yeah, I was. I'll be 100% honest, and like I said, I'm a diehard Notre Dame fan. I did look for something else to watch and couldn't find anything else, so I went back to it. I went back to it, and I don't know. I was, like I said, Ian Book said that every team has a bad day. Brother, your team didn't have a bad day. Your team got punched in the fucking face and did not know how to respond. Just like you said, the interior of that offensive line that had been a strength for them all year couldn't. And if Book did get time, the receivers were blanketed. Their tight ends were blanketed. And the key to the game is they not only put pressure on Book, they kept him in the pocket, which, like you said, he can do amazing things once he gets outside the pocket. And he was not a lot. I didn't even put his rushing totals up because Trevor Lawrence way outrushed him. I guarantee it. I don't remember him getting much of anything as far as with his legs. It was... Mm-mm.
Trevor Lawrence, I think, ended up with like 90 yards or something like that.
Yeah, he was like at 75 yards at halftime. So,
yeah.
And God, I would not want to tackle him. 6'6", that kid's thick.
Mm-hmm.
And they yet again a Notre Dame team. I'm not going to say a Coach Kelly coach team because it's happened before him. When it comes to the big games, they're not ready. And it looked like once once the kicker missed that field goal, all the air was taken out of that sideline. All the air.
Trust me. When it comes to big games and team not being ready, I know more than anybody about that. Being a fucking Michigan fan, so I know your pain.
yeah. So that one, I mean, that's. And am I gonna sit here and say Coach Kelly needs to be fired? Absolutely fucking not. No, not at all. Not at all. Is this a program builder? Yes. Is this a learning experience? Yes. Is it going to be a different... I mean, of course, it's college football. Is it going to be a different team next year? Yes. Yes. And I think that... I'm not going to say that Ian Book is going to help recruit that stud quarterback that you and I have talked about, that Notre Dame and Michigan both have been lacking, and we need that quarterback to become relevant. I think Ian Book has made us one step closer to that, just because of his growth, just because of him when he started to where he finished, and the progression that he made. I think a lot of quarterbacks are going to look at that and go, I'm not perfect, but going into Coach Kelly's system under Tommy Rees might make me a better quarterback and might make me a more draftable quarterback. So we shall see with that, but I'm pretty sure that Coach Kelly will have the next round, hopefully not as embarrassing as this one. And to be honest with you, 2Ks, if it would not shock me to go into that playoff game and do a two overtime with Alabama and come out on top. Do I think it's going to happen? No. But they did it with a Clemson team. It's a possibility. Like I said, do I think it's going to happen? No. I give it a 10% chance of actually happening. But we shall see. We shall see. But let's speaking of that Alabama team, 2K, do you like that transition?
Yeah.
This game was by far the most entertaining fucking game of the night. Thank you for putting this at the last part of the game. And for those of you, I'm just going to throw it out there. For those of you that said Trask played his way out of the Heisman race in the LSU game, that motherfucker played his way right back into it in this game. Because not only is Alabama's defense one of the best defenses in the country because they're a Nick Saban-led defense. Did they start the season out giving up points? Yes. But after the first 3 games, I think I saw a graphic. They were allowing, after the first 3 games of the season, they were allowing 11 points per game. Well, Mr. Thrash and Florida hang 46 on them. 46 on them. Alabama still wins the game 52-46. But you talk about a back and forth game, brother. My God. If you were trying to take shots for every time someone scored a touchdown, you were getting fucked up. You were getting fucked up.
This was the best game. I mean, I think going into this, these conference championship games throughout this entire season, I think it's safe to say that the best game was the Notre Dame Clemson game 1. The game in South Bend, double overtime game. But this game trumped it. This game was the best game of the season from start to finish. Unfortunately for Florida, you run into, in my opinion, I think a lot of people shared the same opinion with me, the best team in college football in Bama. Mm-hmm. Trask went off, but unfortunately the guy that he's going against for the Heisman and Mac Jones went off also.
Yeah.
So
went off even more.
Even more. So. Yeah. I think these are going to be the two highest vote getters when it comes to the Heisman. I think Mac Jones wins it easy, and I think Trask is going to be right behind him at number 2. But this game was awesome. This was an awesome game. And
if Florida would have had any sort of defense, you're looking at the score here. It's 8 points. If they would just got 1 3-0, just one, just one, and. Here's something that, Let me read off the lines here, 2Ks. Mac Jones went 33 of 43, 418 yards, 5 touchdowns, and a pick. Najee Harris, which I think is going to tear Notre Dame a new asshole, went 31 carries, 178 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
And he also had 3 receiving touchdowns.
Yes. And Mr. Smith had 15 receptions, 184 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Now, conversely, Trash went 26 for 40, 408, and 3 touchdowns. It was clean on the interceptions, which is fine. Their top running back, 2Ks, Jones, 2 carries for 24 yards. It's not a fucking typo, because I had to look at 2 different resources just to make sure. But this
54 total rushing yards.
Yeah, this kid Tooney, though, the receiver, my God, that kid's fast. He went 8 catches, 153 yards, and 1 touchdown. Now, this is the complete opposite of the Ohio State Northwestern game.
Yeah.
If you want action, if you want touchdowns, if you want, just everything, this was the game for you. But yeah, I mean, you're looking at the top 2 vote getters in my. I agree with you for the Heisman. I think Mac Jones has it locked up. And the ironic thing about Mac Jones is he was just kind of the fill-in guy. After Tua, what do? He filled in for a couple games. Filled in for Tua when he was hurt. Won a lot of games. Then was obviously named the starter, and it was his team. And what is it? There really wasn't a whole lot of expectations of him going into the season. After they had that rough start, even though they still won games, they had rough starts with that defense. All he does is just fucking ball out. That's I mean, for lack of better terms, he just fucking balled out. And it's just a shame that now if you give me the choice, 2Ks, of Mac Jones or Kyle Trash, I'm taking Trash. I really am.
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking him. It's not his fault that Florida throws shoes and doesn't stop people from catching the ball or running the ball. Because Kyle did not give up the 46 or the 52 points here. That was the defense.
Mm-hmm.
And when you give up half a hundo, you're not going to win many games.
No.
You're not going. It's hard to win football games, even in Madden, when you're hanging half a hundo, or when someone's hanging a half a hundo on you. So yes, I think that we probably in this SEC title game probably saw more first round picks than any other game on the docket here. And like I said, there's a reason why it was in prime time, and it's a reason why it was the one that wrapped up the whole championship weekend game. So, is it a shocker? Is it a shocker that there was so many points scored? Kinda. I have a feeling if you're on the defensive side of the ball, heading into the game against Notre Dame, Coach Saban is not going to want anyone to hang 46 on them. So, I think that defense is going to be fired up. I think that defense is going to be nasty. I think that defense is not going to be giving up 46 points to my Irish.
Yeah, there's this, and I think it's safe. I mean, there's been so many good Alabama teams in the last. I mean, it's been over a decade now, and there's been so many good teams that have won the national championship, and you can make a case for that this is the most complete team that Saban's ever had at Alabama. I mean, both sides of the ball. They're a very good defensive team. I know. I get it. They gave up 46 points to Florida. Florida is one of the best offenses in college football. They've been putting up points like this all season long. So,
100%.
But Bama's defense is one of the best defenses in the nation. Their offense is the best in the nation. I mean, they've been putting up 40, 50, 60 points all season long. You have the Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback. You're surrounded by nothing but weapons. You probably have the best running back in the nation on your team also. This is, I really think, probably the most complete Bama team that I've ever seen. I feel bad. I really feel bad for Notre Dame.
They're going to get their ass beat.
I think it's going to be a bloodbath. And you can make the case that Florida is a better football team than Notre Dame and Ohio State both.
I
You know, and
it's hard to disagree there. I was going to make that point also, but I mean,
you can. I think it would be a legit Final Four if you had Bama, Texas A&M, and Florida, all three in it in the Final Four.
Yeah,
with Clemson.
Yeah,
those potentially could be the four best teams in college football. It's just that Florida has 3 losses. Obviously, the one terrible loss to last week to LSU, but their other 2 losses are to Bama and A&M. So,
yeah, 100%.
It's tough. It's tough, and I hate to praise the SEC so much because I sound like fucking Paul Feinbaum's bitch ass. But
you're.
But man, the SEC is just loaded right now.
Yeah,
and they are every year.
But this year they're more legit loaded. I mean, they're more than just Bama and then everybody else. There's at least a handful in one of the better, I guess you'd say, better parts of this schedule is you got to see all conference games. You didn't, Bama wasn't able to play 2 cupcake games and have no one on their schedule. Same thing with Clemson. Same thing with every team. There wasn't. You had to play your conference schedule, so there wasn't any cupcakes. So the teams that got off to the slow starts where they would have those tune-up games, yeah, they were kind of rough in the beginning, but they found a way to win, and that's what winners do. So, well, 2Ks, we're at our hour mark, brother. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No. Other than I'm glad looking at this playoff that you can say what you want to say about Notre Dame. Not should they be there? Should they not be there? Should Ohio State be there? But they got 1 and 2 right, and I think that in this playoff, the only 2 spots that matter are 1 and 2, and I think it's great that Bama and Clemson can't play against each other until the championship.
Right.
And those are the 2 best teams. Clemson's the only team that I think has a fighting chance at being able to beat Alabama, just because I think they have, Trevor Lawrence on your team, Clemson's defense being healthy now. I think that they can compete with Bama, but I don't see anybody beating Alabama when it comes down to it this year.
It's hard to argue with you 2Ks. It really is. But if nothing else, I will bid you guys adieu. Thank you all for watching. We will see you next week. And as always, Jim Rome, we're coming for you.